Beyond the glow of city lights, where familiarity fades into folklore, lie the small towns. Places of quaint charm, or quiet dread. Welcome, traveler, to Nightmare True Horror. Tonight, we peel back the idyllic veneer of 7 such hamlets, revealing the unsettling truths festering beneath. What secrets does your hometown guard? And if the allure of these hidden horrors draws you in, ensure you are subscribed. For the most chilling tales are often found where everyone knows your name and your secrets. Prepare yourself, for these are stories where the silence screams, and the most terrifying part often comes when you thought you were safe. I felt it from the moment they called my name. That shift in the air, the way the crowd's polite applause seemed to hollow out, leaving nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. The way their eyes changed, from neighborly warmth to something colder, more calculating, like they were measuring me for something I couldn't yet understand. "Congratulations," Mayor Whitaker said, his smile stretched too wide across his face. "This year's Founders' Day honor goes to our newest resident." 3 months earlier, I'd been desperate to escape my life in Boston after the divorce. Havenwood had seemed perfect. A picturesque small town nestled between rolling hills. Population just under 2,000. Property values were surprisingly affordable. The kind of place where people still left homemade pies on your porch to welcome you to the neighborhood. I remember Mrs. Callahan from next door, bringing me a jar of her blackberry. "Preserves the day I moved in. You're going to love it here," she'd said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Havenwood takes care of its own. Something in the way she'd emphasized that last word should have warned me, but I was too enchanted by the clean air, the starlit nights, the blessed quiet after years of city noise. The first signs were subtle. Conversations that stopped when I entered the general store. The way shopkeepers would ask, with peculiar intensity, if I planned to stay long-term. The strange glances when they learned I had no family, no connections outside of town. At the time, I chalked it up to small-town curiosity. Then came the flyers for the Founders' Day Festival, Havenwood's proudest tradition since 1887. They appeared everywhere, tacked to telephone poles, slipped under my windshield wiper, pushed through my mail slot. The design was cheerful enough. Red and blue bunting framing images of parades and pie-eating contests. But at the bottom of each flyer in smaller print, Annual Founders Lottery. A special honor awaits. I asked Tom at the hardware store about it while buying supplies to fix my porch steps. "Oh, that's just a bit of fun," he'd said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Town, tradition, nothing to worry about." His fingers drummed nervously on the counter as he counted my change twice. "You'll be there, won't you?" It didn't sound like a question. As the festival approached, the town changed. Parents pulled their children closer when I walked by. Neighbors who had been friendly became reserved, watchful. I started noticing hushed conversations that fell silent when I approached. Once passing the town hall, I overheard Mayor Whitaker speaking with the sheriff. "This year needs to go smoothly," he'd said, his voice low but urgent. After what happened last time, the sheriff had noticed me then, and their conversation abruptly shifted to the weather. The morning of the festival dawned bright and clear. Main Street transformed overnight. Food stalls, carnival games, a bandstand in the town square. On the surface, it looked like any small town celebration, but there was something off about the laughter. Too loud, too forced. The children's games seemed mechanical, rehearsed, and everywhere I went, eyes followed. At noon, the crowd gathered around the bandstand. Mayor Whitaker, tall, silver-haired with those politicians' teeth, took the stage. Beside him stood a wooden box, ornately carved with symbols I didn't recognize. "Welcome to the 134th Annual Founders' Day celebration," he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. "As tradition dictates, we begin with the lottery." That's when I noticed something odd. Every resident wore a small red pin on their lapel. Everyone except for 7 people scattered throughout the crowd. Like me, they wore nothing. All newcomers, I realized with a chill. All outsiders. The mayor reached into the box and dramatically pulled out a single slip of paper. The silence was absolute. Not even the birds in the nearby trees made a sound. "This year's honor goes to..." His eyes found mine before he even read the name. "Alex Morgan." My name. My blood turned to ice. The crowd parted, creating a path from where I stood to the bandstand. No one would meet my gaze. A young boy nearby started crying silently until his father shushed him. "Come forward, Alex," the mayor said. I considered running. But where would I go? I was surrounded by hundreds of people, and somehow I knew they wouldn't let me leave. So I walked, each step heavy, to the stage. The mayor handed me a small wooden token carved with the year and the word "Special Honor." His hand lingered on mine a moment too long, his fingers ice cold, despite the summer heat. "The celebration continues until sunset," he announced to the crowd. "When our honoree will help us, remember." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. People congratulated me with tight smiles and empty eyes. They insisted I try every food booth, every game, always with someone watching me, always with that same expectant look. I tried asking what exactly this honor entailed, but received only vague responses about tradition and remembrance. By mid-afternoon, I managed to slip away to the town library. The elderly librarian was nowhere to be seen, so I took the opportunity to search for information about Havenwood's founding and this mysterious lottery. In a dusty back room, I found bound volumes of the local newspaper dating back decades. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Every year, like clockwork, someone disappeared from Havenwood the night of Founder's Day. Always a newcomer, always someone who wouldn't be missed by the outside world. The official explanations varied. Tragic accidents, sudden moves, people who just drifted on. But the pattern was unmistakable. The most recent article was from last year. A young hiker passing through town who was never found. Authorities concluded he must have gotten lost in the surrounding wilderness. The article included a photo of Mayor Whitaker, looking appropriately concerned during the search efforts. But what chilled me most was a faded photograph from 1887, the town's founding year. It showed a group of settlers standing proudly before newly built structures. The caption read, "Havenwood's founding families celebrate survival of the terrible winter." In the background, barely visible, was what looked like a freshly dug grave. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. A hand clamped down on my shoulder. I jerked around to find Mrs. Callahan, my kindly neighbor, her usual warm smile replaced by something harder. "Snooping isn't polite, dear," she said softly. "Especially on your special day." "What is this?" I demanded, pointing to the articles. "What happens to the lottery winners?" Her eyes darted to the window. The sun was beginning to set, painting the room in shades of blood orange and deep purple. "It's nearly time," she said. "They'll be looking for you. Tell me what this is about," I insisted, my voice rising with panic. Mrs. Callahan sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 70-plus years. The winter of 1887 was brutal. The founders were starving. Supplies ran out. They made a choice. Her eyes met mine, hollow with an ancient guilt. Our eyes met mine, hollow with an ancient guilt. One outsider sacrificed so the rest could survive. They promised the land that they would always remember, always honor the sacrifice. One outsider every year to feed the soil. My throat constricted. "You're going to kill me, or some twisted memorial." "Not kill," she corrected, as if the distinction mattered. "The honored one walks the path of sacrifice, follows the route through town that the first sacrifice took, spends the night in the founder's cellar, feels what they felt." Her voice dropped. "Most survive, if they understand, if they truly honor the memory, and if they don't." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The library door creaked open. Mayor Whitaker stood silhouetted against the dying light, flanked by two large men I recognized from the town council. "There you are," he said pleasantly, as if we were meeting for coffee. "It's time." I backed away, bumping into the shelves behind me. Old newspapers scattered to the floor. "I'm not participating in your sick ritual. I'm afraid that's not an option," the mayor said, his voice hardening. "The honor has been bestowed. The town requires it." The two men moved forward, their intent clear. I glanced frantically around the room. No other exits. My only chance was to get past them somehow. I feigned surrender, shoulders slumping. Then, as they reached for me, I shoved the heavy newspaper cabinet with all my strength. It toppled forward, crashing into the men. I bolted past them, past the startled mayor, and out into the street. The festival was gone. Main Street was deserted, the food stalls abandoned, the decorations hanging limp in the evening breeze. In the distance, I could hear it, a low, rhythmic chanting coming from the direction of the town square. I ran the opposite way, toward my house, toward my car. If I could just reach it. The street ahead was blocked. A line of townspeople stood shoulder to shoulder, faces solemn in the twilight. I turned down an alley, heart hammering against my ribs. Another blocked exit. They were hurting me, I realized with growing horror. Like an animal, I ducked into the narrow space between two buildings, pressing myself against the cold brick. Footsteps approached, slow, unhurried. They knew I had nowhere to go. The more you resist, the harder it will be, came the mayor's voice, closer now. The first sacrifice tried to run too. It didn't end well for him. My mind raced. There had to be a way out. The token they'd given me dug into my palm where I'd been clutching it. I looked down at it. The carved wood, the date, the word special honor. Something about it nagged at me. The footsteps stopped just outside my hiding place. I could hear breathing, multiple people. Waiting. "We know you're in there, Alex," the mayor called. "Come out now, and you can complete the honor with dignity. Make it meaningful." I examined the token more closely. The carving wasn't just decorative. It was a map. A simplified layout of the town with a path marked through it. And at the end of the path, a small building I recognized from old photos in the library. The original town hall, now preserved as a historical landmark on the edge of town. The founder's cellar. That's where the ritual would end, where I was supposed to feel what they felt. But there was something else carved into the token. Tiny, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. A second path, branching off from the main one. An escape route. I made my decision. I stepped out of my hiding place, hands raised in apparent surrender. "I understand now," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "The honor, the remembrance. I'll do it." Relief washed over the mayor's face. Behind him stood at least 20 townspeople, some holding lanterns, others clutching what looked disturbingly like restraints. "Wise choice," he said. "Follow the path. Feel what was felt. Remember what must be remembered." They formed a procession, with me at the center. We walked through town, following a route that seemed etched into their collective memory. At each stop, the old well, the church, the original general store. The mayor recited part of the town's founding story, how the settlers had been stranded by early snow, how supplies dwindled, how hunger and desperation grew. As we walked, I carefully tracked our route against the hidden map on my token. We were approaching the point where the second path diverged, a narrow street leading past the old cemetery. The mayor was deep into his recitation. The townspeople focused on his words when I made my move. I stumbled, as if weak from the emotional weight of the ceremony. As hands reached to steady me, I twisted away and sprinted down the side street. Shouts erupted behind me. The orderly procession dissolved into chaos. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, the token clutched in my hand like a lifeline, following the hidden path. It led me to the cemetery, through a broken section of fence, and into the woods beyond. Behind me, the shouts grew more distant, then closer again, as they organized their pursuit. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, sweeping across the trees. I followed the token's map, moving deeper into the forest. The path seemed to end at the base of a steep ravine. A dead end. I frantically searched the area, running my fingers along rock faces, looking for anything. A cave, a crevice, any kind of shelter. My hand brushed against something metal. A grate, half hidden by overgrowth. It was locked, but the rust had weakened it. I pulled with desperate strength, and it gave way with a groan that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet woods. Beyond was a tunnel, old, damp, smelling of earth and decay. Some kind of drainage system, perhaps, or an abandoned mine shaft. I crawled inside just as flashlight beams swept over the spot where I'd been standing. I pulled the grate closed behind me and crawled forward, the token clenched between my teeth, using my phone's dim light to navigate. The tunnel stretched ahead, descending gradually. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. The air grew colder. After what felt like hours, the tunnel widened into a larger chamber. My light revealed rusted equipment, rotting wooden supports, definitely an old mine. And there, scratched into one wall, were initials and dates, dozens of them. The earliest dated 1888, the year after the town's founding. The most recent was from last year. Names of those who had escaped, who had found the hidden path. I collapsed against the wall, exhaustion finally overtaking me. Oh, I wasn't safe yet. I'd need to wait until daylight, then follow the tunnel to wherever it led. But for the moment, I had escaped the honor. As my breathing slowed, I noticed something else carved into the wall, larger than the other markings. A message. The soil will still be fed. They'll choose another. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My escape wouldn't end the cycle. They would simply select another outsider, perhaps one of the 6 others I'd seen without pins. The ritual would continue. I thought of running back, of trying to warn the others, but I knew it was already too late. The honor had to be bestowed. The soil had to be fed. A tradition unbroken since 1887. I spent that night in the darkness, listening to distant, muffled sounds that might have been searching parties, or might have been my imagination. When morning came, I followed the tunnel to its exit, an abandoned entrance miles from town, hidden by decades of overgrowth. I never returned to Havenwood, never reported what happened. Who would believe me? A town of cannibals? A ritual dating back to the 19th century? I left everything behind. My house, my possessions, the life I'd tried to build. But I kept the token. And every year, when Founders Day approaches, I think about those other 6 outsiders. How I wonder who was chosen in my place. I wonder if they found the hidden path, or if they became part of Havenwood's grisly tradition. And sometimes in my dreams I hear the mayor's voice, reciting the Founder's prayer. One sacrifice to feed the many, one memory to honor them all. The soil must be fed, and Havenwood never forgets. I'd been living in Blackwood Gap for exactly 3 months, when curiosity got the better of me. As a true crime journalist looking for fresh material, I'd moved to this remote mountain town, hoping to revitalize my stalled career, with stories from a place most of the world had forgotten. The locals didn't take kindly to newcomers asking questions, but I persisted, telling myself their standoffish nature was typical small-town behavior. It was on a crisp autumn afternoon that I first noticed St. Augustine's Church, perched on the outskirts of town. The dilapidated stone structure sat nestled among ancient oaks, its weathered spire reaching skyward like a crooked finger. Most residents avoided my questions about it, offering only terse responses. Been empty for years, or nobody goes there anymore. My research at the local library yielded little. Just a brief mention that services had stopped in 1973, following unfortunate incidents. The town records from that period were mysteriously incomplete. The librarian, Mrs. Henley, a woman in her 70s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, caught me reviewing the files. "Curious about St. Augustine's?" she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Some things are better left alone, Mr. Parker, especially in Blackwood Gap." Her warning only intensified my interest. That weekend, armed with a flashlight and my camera, I made the trek up the overgrown path to the church. The massive wooden doors, etched with religious symbols I didn't recognize, creaked open with surprising ease. Inside, dust particles danced in shafts of colored light, filtering through broken, stained glass. The pews were mostly intact, though covered in decades of grime. The altar stood empty, save for a tarnished cross that hung askew. Nothing remarkable. Just another abandoned building slowly surrendering to time. I was about to leave when I noticed something odd about the floor near the altar. Unlike the stone flooring throughout the rest of the church, this section was wooden, and one plank seemed slightly askew. Kneeling down, I ran my fingers along the edges and felt a draft. With a bit of effort, I managed to pry it up, revealing a narrow set of stairs descending into darkness. The smell hit me first. Damp earth mingled with something metallic and organic. I hesitated, considering Mrs. Henley's warning, but my journalistic instincts won out. Switching on my flashlight, I began my descent. The staircase spiraled downward for what seemed like too great a distance to still be under the church. The temperature dropped with each step, and the walls transitioned from stone to rough-hewn earth. Finally, I reached a heavy wooden door secured with an ancient-looking iron lock. The lock was broken, recently, from the look of it. Someone had been here before me, and not long ago. I pushed the door open, wincing at the loud creak that echoed through the darkness. My flashlight beam swept across a large underground chamber that appeared to be some kind of archive. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books and stacked papers yellowed with age. A large oak table dominated the center of the room, covered in maps and documents. But what caught my attention was the far corner of the chamber, where the beam of my flashlight revealed a collection of bones carefully arranged on a stone slab. Some were clearly animal remains, but others, I swallowed hard. Others were unmistakably human. Fragments of skulls, ribs, and what appeared to be finger bones. Several showed clean, deliberate cuts, as if they had been dissected with surgical precision. And then I saw it. A fresh red handprint smeared across the wall beside the collection. The blood was still wet enough to glisten in my flashlight beam. My heart hammered against my ribs as I backed toward the door. I wasn't alone down here, but before I could flee, my light caught something else. A leather-bound journal lying open on the table. Despite my better judgment, I approached it, drawn by the neat, meticulous handwriting on its pages. The journal belonged to Father Thomas Blackwood, the town's founder according to my research. But the dates in the journal were impossible. They spanned from 1842 to 2023. Nearly 2 centuries. I quickly skimmed the entries, my blood turning to ice, as I read passages describing sacrifices necessary for the town's prosperity and blood payments to ensure continued peace. One passage in particular stood out. Today I added Miriam Collins to the ledger. Her death was ruled accidental, a fall from Widow's Peak. The sheriff performed admirably, as always. Her bones will strengthen the binding. Blackwood Gap remains safe for another year. With trembling hands, I flipped to a section labeled Ledger of Payments and found hundreds of names arranged by year, dating back to the town's founding. Each name had a cause of death listed beside it: drowning, hunting accident, house fire, hiking mishap. The most recent entry was from just 3 weeks ago. Jessica Winters, 26, car accident on Mountain Pass Road. I remembered the headline in the local paper. The brakes had failed on her car, sending her over the guardrail. The town had mourned the tragic accident, but it wasn't an accident at all. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made me freeze. I quickly switched off my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall beside the door. The steps were unhurried, deliberate, someone who knew their way around this darkness. "I know you're down here," called a familiar voice. Sheriff Mills, the affable lawman who'd welcomed me to town with a firm handshake and warnings about the dangers of the surrounding wilderness. "No point in hiding, Mr. Parker. You found our little secret." I remained silent, eyes adjusting to the darkness. A faint glow appeared as the sheriff descended, an oil lantern in his hand casting grotesque shadows across his face. "The town council thought you might be trouble," he continued, setting the lantern on the table. "Journalists always ask too many questions. But I said we should give you a chance. Everyone deserves a chance to become part of our community." He picked up Father Blackwood's journal, caressing its cover almost lovingly. "Beautiful, isn't it? The unbroken lineage, the perfect system. One sacrifice each year keeps Blackwood Gap prosperous, safe from the outside world's troubles. No economic depressions here. No crime waves. No drug epidemics. Just peace and prosperity, purchased at a fair price." I couldn't help myself. "You call murder a fair price?" He smiled sadly. "It's not murder, Mr. Parker. It's conservation, preservation of a way of life. And it works. The founder discovered the ritual, and each keeper since has maintained it. I'm the current keeper, but someday I'll pass the duties to someone else. His hand moved to his belt, where his service pistol rested. The question is what to do with you now. You weren't scheduled to be this year's offering, but plans can change. My mind raced, remembering the church's layout, calculating my odds of making it up the stairs before he could draw his weapon. The whole town knows about this. They're all complicit. Not all, he admitted. Most just enjoy the benefits without asking questions. Human nature, you know. People don't want to know the uncomfortable truths behind their comfortable lives. I edged toward the door. And what about Jessica Winters? Did she deserve to die so everyone else could have their perfect little town? Something darkened in his expression. Some sacrifices are harder than others. Jessica was special to me. But the ritual demands what it demands. The bones must be added to the collection. The blood payment made. As he spoke, I noticed something odd. The fresh, bloody handprint on the wall seemed to be moving. The blood was slowly flowing upward, defying gravity, forming new pattern. The sheriff followed my gaze and smiled. Ah, you see it working. The offering has been accepted. The town will prosper for another year. In that moment of distraction, I bolted for the door, slamming it behind me as I took the stairs 2 at a time. I heard his shout, followed by the door crashing open below. The winding staircase gave me precious seconds as I emerged into the church proper and sprinted for the exit. Outside, the sun was setting, bathing the town below in golden light. It looked so normal, so peaceful, the quintessential American small town. How many of its residents knew what happened to maintain that illusion? I made it to my car and tore down the mountain road, certain the sheriff would be organizing a pursuit. My mind raced with what I discovered. Not just a murder, but a system of ritualistic killings spanning nearly 2 centuries, all to feed some dark entity beneath an abandoned church. As I rounded a curve, my headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding sideways. When the vehicle came to a stop, the figure was gone, if it had ever been there at all. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Accidents happen frequently on Mountain Pass Road. Be careful driving tonight. I tossed the phone aside and pressed the accelerator, determined to make it out of Blackwood Gap alive. But as I approached the town limits, my car began to sputter, the engine cutting out despite a full tank of gas. The steering wheel locked up as I approached a sharp curve overlooking a steep ravine. The same spot where Jessica Winters had her accident. Biting the unresponsive wheel, I managed to pull the emergency brake and skid to a stop just short of the guardrail. Through my windshield I could see headlights approaching, multiple vehicles, moving slowly, deliberately. With no other option, I abandoned my car and plunged into the dense forest alongside the road. If I couldn't drive out of Blackwood Gap, I would have to escape on foot. That was 3 days ago. I've been moving only at night, avoiding roads and houses, making my way through the wilderness toward the next town, some 15 miles distant. My phone died the first night, but before it did, I uploaded this account to a scheduled email that will go out to my editor if I don't cancel it within 24 hours. The woods are never silent at night. There are always footsteps just beyond my vision, voices whispering just below the threshold of understanding. Twice I've seen lanterns moving through the trees in organized search patterns. Last night, I found a bloody handprint on my backpack when I awoke, identical to the one in the church cellar. I don't know how it got there. I've taken to checking my skin for cuts or marks I don't remember receiving. If you're reading this, I didn't make it out of Blackwood Gap. The town has claimed another accidental death for its ledger. But unlike the others, I won't go quietly into their collection. My bones won't strengthen whatever binding keeps their dark bargain intact. And if you're smart, you'll stay far away from this picturesque little town with its perfect crime statistics and prosperous Main Street. Because in Blackwood Gap, Nothing happens by accident. Nothing at all. Wait, I hear something. Footsteps just outside the abandoned ranger station where I've taken shelter. They're not even trying to be quiet anymore. And there's something else. A sound like stone grinding against stone coming from beneath the floorboards. The door's opening now. I see lantern light. I see the sheriff's smile. I see the sheriff's smile. People always say cemeteries are peaceful, quiet, a place of rest. But when you're the caretaker of a small-town graveyard, like me, you see things differently. My name's Eli. I'm 35, single, and I've maintained the Cedar Hill Cemetery on the outskirts of our little Ohio town for nearly 10 years. It's a job most folks wouldn't want, but it suited me. Quiet hours, simple tasks, predictable routine. At least, that's how it was supposed to be. About 6 months ago, things changed. It started subtly. A bit of disturbed soil around freshly dug graves. I chalked it up to animals. Dogs sometimes wandered in, raccoons too. I fixed the soil, made sure gates were secured, and thought nothing of it. But then it happened again, and again. Always after funerals for people rumored to have money. At first, I dismissed it as coincidence, paranoia even, but the pattern became undeniable. Whoever was digging knew exactly where to find jewelry, watches, rings, even gold fillings from teeth. This wasn't vandalism. It was systematic, deliberate. I became obsessed. Every morning, my stomach churned with anxiety as I approached fresh graves, dread pooling in my gut at the sight of slightly disturbed earth. Each time, the desecration grew bolder. It felt personal, almost like the thief was taunting me, letting me know I couldn't stop them. I reported it to the police, of course, but our small town sheriff, Dale Carter, just sighed. Probably teenagers messing around, he said, but teenagers wouldn't carefully pry gold fillings from a corpse's teeth. This was someone meticulous, cold, experienced. I decided to set up trail cameras around the cemetery, hidden carefully among the trees. Each morning I reviewed the footage anxiously. Days passed with nothing, until one foggy dawn I saw him. The figure was hunched, wrapped tightly in a dark coat, face obscured by a hood. He moved purposefully, shovel in hand, straight to a fresh grave. My heart pounded watching him methodically dig, removing items calmly, like a gardener harvesting crops. The grainy footage offered no clear face, but I recognized his stance, his movements. It was chillingly familiar. Paranoia clawed at me. Who could it be? Who knew the details of every burial intimately enough to target valuables so precisely? Then one evening, as I walked home, Sheriff Carter slowed his cruiser alongside me. "Find your gravedigger yet?" he called, smirking slightly. Something in his voice made me uneasy, but I brushed it aside. Dale and I weren't friends exactly, but we'd grown up together. He wouldn't, would he? I shook off the feeling, determined to catch the thief. Every night became sleepless, jumping at shadows, nerves frayed thin, until one stormy night changed everything. Thunder rolled in heavily, rain hammering rooftops. I lay awake, unable to rest. A sudden intuition gripped me, pulling me towards the cemetery, as if something whispered urgently in my ear. Through blinding rain, flashlight trembling in hand, I moved quietly through the darkened cemetery. My stomach twisted painfully, seeing a faint light flickering near a recent burial plot. Mr. Thompson, a wealthy old man who'd passed last week, quietly approaching, pulse racing. I finally saw him clearly. The thief, hunched over the open grave. My heart nearly stopped. It was Sheriff Dale Carter. Disbelief paralyzed me. Dale methodically searched the coffin, rain dripping from his soaked uniform. Rage and fear battled inside me. I had to confront him. Gathering courage, I stepped forward, shouting over the storm. "Dale, what the hell are you doing?" He spun around, eyes wide, shocked briefly. Then his face darkened. You shouldn't have come here, Eli, he said coldly, dropping the gold fillings he'd pried loose into his pocket. My mind raced, fear spiking through my veins. Why, Dale? You're supposed to protect these people. He laughed humorlessly. Protect them? From what? They're dead, Eli. They don't need it anymore. His hand moved slowly to his sidearm. Terror surged through me. Instinctively, I lunged forward, knocking him back. We grappled violently, sliding in mud, fighting desperately. Thunder cracked overhead, illuminating Dale's face twisted in fury as he reached desperately for his gun. I swung the flashlight wildly, connecting with his temple. Dale staggered backward, losing his footing, slipping into the open grave with a sickening thud. For a moment, there was silence. Rain poured mercilessly, mingling with blood streaming down Dale's unconscious face. Hands trembling, I called 911. By dawn, the cemetery buzzed with police lights. Dale survived, arrested and disgraced. The town reeled from the betrayal. Our trusted sheriff exploiting his badge for greed, targeting vulnerable families mourning loved ones. Dale confessed everything, detailing his sick obsession with wealth hidden beneath Cedar Hill's soil. Life moved on, but the town never fully recovered. Dale's crimes left scars, suspicion lingering in every familiar face. Even now, years later, trust feels fragile. I still tend to Cedar Hill Cemetery, unable to shake the dread each morning brings. Paranoia clings to me like shadows, always glancing over my shoulder, convinced someone watches from darkness. Some nights, restless and haunted, I visit Dale's former grave-robbing grounds. I stare into empty darkness, heart hammering, half expecting to see his figure hunched once more, shovel in hand. Because even though Dale sits locked away, guilt consumes me. His greed wasn't supernatural, but it haunts me all the same, lingering like a whispered curse in Cedar Hill's silent graves. You shouldn't have come here. My name is Sarah, and for the last 2 years, the graveyard shift at Havenwood Manor has been my life. It's the only nursing home in our small, isolated town. A rambling old building that smells perpetually of disinfectant and despair. Working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., you see a different side of things. The quiet is heavier, the shadows deeper. Most nights are a predictable routine of medication rounds, checking vitals, and the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleeping residents. Until last week. Last week, the quiet started to scream. It began with Mr. Henderson in room 212. Died in his sleep. Dr. Albright signed off. Natural causes. Old age. Sad, but not unexpected. He was 93. Then, 2 nights later, Mrs. Gable from 304. Same thing. Peaceful, they said. Natural. She was 89. My gut churned. 2 in 1 week felt like a lot, even for Havenwood, but it was the third one, little Elsie Peterson from 110, that really set the alarm bells ringing. Elsie was only 76, relatively spry, always had a joke. She died peacefully in her sleep on Friday. I was on duty when the mortuary attendant came for Elsie. As we were preparing her, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible mark on the inside of her frail arm, near the crook of her elbow. A fresh injection site, already starting to bruise, too small for an IV line, too precise to be accidental. My blood ran cold. I'd seen marks like that before in my air training days. Later that shift, driven by a gnawing unease, I checked Mr. Henderson's records, then Mrs. Gable's. Under the pretext of reviewing medication changes, I subtly examined their arms when I did my rounds before their bodies were taken. The same tiny telltale mark on all 3, hidden, discreet, but undeniably there. Natural causes suddenly felt like a sick joke. My mind raced. Who? Why? Havenwood was understaffed, especially on the night shift. It was usually just me, one other nurse, and a couple of aides. I started pulling medication logs, my hands shaking. The official records showed nothing unusual. Scheduled painkillers, sleeping aids, heart medication. Nothing that would require an injection like that. Nothing that would explain 3 sudden, peaceful deaths. Then I started looking at the staffing rota, cross-referencing it with the nights Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Gable, and Elsie had died. A pattern emerged. A chilling, undeniable pattern. One name appeared on the schedule for every single one of those nights. Agnes Periwinkle. Agnes. Quiet, efficient, almost unnervingly calm. Agnes. She'd been at Havenwood for over a decade, a fixture on the night shift. Older, matronly, with watery blue eyes, and hands that were surprisingly strong. She was always offering to take the more challenging patients, the ones who were agitated or in pain. She'd volunteer for extra shifts, rarely called in sick. Someone has to be here for them in their final hours, she'd once said to me, her voice soft, almost reverent. At the time, I thought it was dedication. Now, her words took on a horrifying new meaning. The next few nights were a living hell. Every time I saw Agnes moving silently down the dimly lit corridors, every time she entered a residence room, my heart hammered against my ribs. Her calm demeanor, once reassuring, now seemed predatory. Her gentle touch, a potential death sentence. I watched her like a hawk, noting every medication she administered, every interaction. But she was meticulous, her records flawless. If she was doing something, she was an expert at hiding it. I found a small locked cabinet in the rarely used old utility closet at the end of the west wing. The lock was flimsy. Inside, tucked behind dusty cleaning supplies, were several small, unlabeled glass vials, some empty, some half full of a clear liquid, and a box of single-use syringes, the kind that would leave a mark just like the ones I'd seen. My stomach lurched. This was her stash. I knew I had to go to the police, but what did I have? Suspicion? Circumstantial evidence? A few tiny marks that could, perhaps, be explained away? Agnes was a respected long-term employee. I was relatively new, and our town, Havenwood, was the kind of place that didn't like its dark secrets aired. Dr. Albright, who signed the death certificates, was Agnes' cousin. The head administrator, Mrs. Blackwood, played bridge with Agnes every Thursday. The fear was a constant companion, a cold knot in my stomach. I started documenting everything in a small hidden notebook. Times, dates, Agnes movements, the vials. I even managed to discreetly photograph the injection sites on the next resident, who passed peacefully while Agnes was on duty. Mr. Abernathy from 201. His arm, too, bore the tiny damning signature. The climax came when I saw Agnes heading towards the room of Mrs. Petrov, a feisty old Russian woman who, despite her numerous ailments, had a fierce will to live. Agnes was carrying a small, covered tray. My shift was almost over. The gray light of dawn was beginning to seep through the blinds. I knew with a chilling certainty what was about to happen. "Agnes," I called out, my voice louder, firmer than I expected. "Let me take that from Mrs. Petrov. You look tired. Why don't you get a head start on your end-of-shift paperwork?" Agnes froze, her back to me. She turned slowly, her face a mask of calm. But her eyes, those watery blue eyes, held a flicker of something cold, reptilian. "That's very kind of you, Sarah dear," she said, her voice like silk. "But I always like to see to my special ones personally." "I insist," I said, stepping closer, positioning myself between her and Mrs. Petrov's door. "It's no trouble." For a long moment we just stood there, the silence of the pre-dawn nursing home stretching taut between us. Her gaze was unwavering, assessing. Then a tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "As you wish, dear," she said, handing me the tray. "Just be gentle with her. She's very fragile." On the tray, beneath a napkin, was a small syringe filled with a clear liquid and a single perfect white rose. A nightingale tradition, some called it. For those about to pass, Agnes, the angel of death, had her own twisted version. I didn't give the injection. As soon as Agnes was out of sight, I secured the tray, the syringe, my notebook, and I walked out of Havenwood Manor. I didn't go to the local police. I drove straight to the state authorities, 2 counties over. The investigation was quiet, swift, and brutal for the town of Havenwood. Agnes Periwinkle, it turned out, had been easing the suffering of residents for years. A self-appointed euthanist who believed she was doing God's work, or perhaps just enjoyed the power. The clear liquid was a potent cocktail of insulin and potassium. The injection marks were her signature. Dr. Albright lost his license. Mrs. Blackwood retired amidst a storm of scandal. Havenwood Manor is under new management now. They call it Willow Creek Care Center. But I can't drive past that old building without a shiver. I still see Agnes' calm face, her watery eyes, the syringe hidden beneath the rose. And I know that sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't lurk in the shadows with fangs and claws. Sometimes they wear a nurse's uniform, offer a gentle smile, and whisper about easing your pain. Their motives as dark and unfathomable as the deepest, quietest night. I should have listened to my gut the moment we signed those papers. But Sarah was so excited about the Victorian house on Elm Street, with its wraparound porch and original hardwood floors. "It's perfect, Jake," she'd said, squeezing my hand as we stood in the overgrown garden. "We can make this beautiful again." That was 3 weeks ago. Now, as I sit here typing this with shaking hands, I wonder if some places are meant to stay buried. The first thing we found was the doll. I was clearing weeds behind the old oak tree when my shovel hit something soft. At first, I thought it was just more roots. But when I brushed away the dirt, porcelain stared back at me. A child's doll, maybe 2 feet tall, wearing a faded blue dress. The worst part, someone had gouged out its eyes, leaving dark, hollow sockets that seemed to watch me even without pupils. "Probably just left behind by the previous owners," Sarah said when I showed her. But I caught the way her voice wavered. She wrapped it in an old towel and put it in the garage. "Kids lose toys all the time." Except the town historian, Mr. Brennan, had mentioned the previous owner lived alone. No children, no family visits, just disappeared one day, leaving everything behind. The second discovery came 2 days later. I was working near the garden shed when my rake caught on something metallic. 3 silver lockets, tarnished black with age, buried about 6 inches down. Each one had intricate engravings on the front. Roses, vines, delicate scrollwork. Beautiful craftsmanship. But when I pried them open, expecting to find old photographs or maybe locks of hair, there was nothing, just empty spaces where pictures should have been, as if someone had carefully removed every trace of whoever these lockets were meant to remember. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching our house. I kept getting up to check the windows, peering through the curtains at the dark street. The streetlight nearest our house had been broken since we moved in, casting our front yard in deep shadows. "You're being paranoid," Sarah murmured, when I climbed back into bed for the 3rd time. But I noticed she'd started locking the bedroom door at night. Mr. Brennan showed up unannounced on Thursday morning, his thin smile stretching across his weathered face like old leather. "Heard you folks have been doing some gardening," he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. His eyes never quite met mine directly, always looking just past my shoulder, as if he was reading something written on the wall behind me. "Just cleaning up the backyard," I replied, not mentioning our discoveries. Something about his visit felt off. The way he kept glancing toward the garden, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh in a nervous rhythm. "Previous owner, Mrs. Holloway. She loved that garden," he continued, his voice taking on a dreamy quality. Spent hours out there digging, planting, always digging. He paused, tilting his head. Find anything interesting? He paused, tilting his head. The question hung in the air like smoke. I forced a laugh. Just weeds and old roots. His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. Never did. Well, that's good. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping things lie. After he left, I found Sarah standing at the kitchen window, watching him walk down the street. He gives me the creeps, she whispered. The way he talks about this place. It's like he knows something we don't. That weekend, we found the shoe. I was digging near the back fence, preparing to plant Sarah's rose bushes, when my shovel struck something that definitely wasn't a root. The leather was cracked and faded, but I could tell it had once been expensive. A woman's heel, size 7, with a delicate strap. The kind of shoe you'd wear to church or a dinner party. Just one shoe. No sign of its mate. No sign of its mate. Sarah went pale when I showed it to her. This is getting weird, Jake. Really weird. She held the shoe at arm's length, as if it might bite her. What kind of person buries random stuff in their garden? That's when I remembered something Mr. Brennan had said during his visit. Always digging. Not gardening. Digging. I decided to do some research at the library. The elderly clerk, Mrs. Peterson, remembered Mrs. Holloway well. Strange woman, she said, shaking her gray head. Came in here every week, always checking out books about, well, unusual subjects. What kind of subjects? Mrs. Peterson lowered her voice. Preservation techniques, embalming, how to keep things from decomposing. She shuddered. Always said she was researching for a novel she was writing, but I never saw her publish anything. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. I started digging at night. I told Sarah I was having trouble sleeping anyway. Might as well be productive. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about what else might be buried in our yard. 3 nights of careful excavation revealed a pattern. The items weren't randomly scattered. They formed a rough circle around the old oak tree. Each burial spot was exactly 18 inches deep, as if measured precisely. On the 4th night, I found the photographs. They were in a metal box, wrapped in plastic to protect them from moisture. Dozens of Polaroids, all showing the same scene from different angles. Our garden, but years ago when it was well maintained. Beautiful flower beds, carefully trimmed hedges, and in the center, near the oak tree, what looked like a small memorial. But it was the people in the photos that made my blood freeze. The same woman in each picture, posing next to different sections of the garden. She was middle-aged with graying hair and kind eyes. She looked normal, exactly like someone's friendly neighbor, except for the last photo. In this one, she wasn't alone. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows of the oak tree, stood the silhouettes of other people. Men, women, even what looked like children. They were all turned toward the camera, but their faces were completely obscured by darkness. The date stamp on the back read 2 months before Mrs. Holloway's disappearance. I showed the photos to Sarah the next morning. Her face went white as she flipped through them. Jake, we need to call the police. And tell them what? That we found some old photos in our yard. Look at this. She pointed to the memorial in the center photo. That's exactly where you found the doll. And here, she flipped to another picture. This flower bed is where we found the lockets. The pattern was undeniable. Each item we'd found corresponded to specific locations in the old photos. Mrs. Holloway hadn't been randomly burying junk. She'd been creating some kind of twisted memorial. But for whom? That afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office to research property records. What I found made my hands shake as I read. Our house had been sold 4 times in the past 15 years. Each previous owner had disappeared without a trace. No forwarding addresses, no contact with family or friends. They'd simply vanished, leaving behind all their possessions. Mrs. Holloway was just the most recent. The digging sound started that night. I woke around 2 a.m. to the rhythmic scraping of metal against earth. At first I thought I was dreaming, but Sarah was awake too, her eyes wide in the darkness. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The sound was coming from our backyard. Slow, methodical digging, like someone working with careful precision. I grabbed a flashlight and crept to the bedroom window, parting the curtains just enough to peer outside. The yard was empty, but I could see fresh dirt scattered around the base of the oak tree. Someone had been digging there recently. Very recently. "We're calling the police," Sarah said, reaching for her phone. But when the officers arrived 20 minutes later, there was no evidence of any disturbance. The ground around the oak tree looked exactly as I'd left it after my own excavations. The officers were polite but clearly thought we were paranoid new homeowners jumping at shadows. After they left, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see fresh footprints in the soft earth around the tree. Small, delicate prints. A woman's shoe. Size 7. What? The next day, Mr. Brennan appeared at our door again. That same unsettling smile stretched across his face. "Heard you folks had some excitement last night," he said, somehow managing to look both sympathetic and amused. "How did you hear about that?" Sarah asked, crossing her arms. "Small town. Word travels fast." He adjusted his glasses, that nervous finger drumming starting up again. "You know, Mrs. Holloway used to complain about night sounds too," said she heard digging in her garden. Of course, everyone thought she was just, well, lonely people sometimes imagine things. "What happened to her?" I asked directly. "Really happened, I mean." For the first time, his smile faltered slightly. "Some folks just aren't meant to leave Whisper Creek," he said quietly. "This town has a way of keeping what belongs to it." After he left, Sarah turned to me with frightened eyes. "Jake, I want to sell this house. Today." But when we called our realtor, she had disturbing news. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be an issue with your deed. According to the county records, the previous owner never actually transferred ownership. Legally, Mrs. Holloway still owns your house." "That's impossible," I said. "We have the signed papers, the bank transfer, everything. I know it sounds crazy, but the system shows she's still the owner of record. We'll need to sort this out before any sale can proceed." That night, the digging sounds came earlier. This time, I was ready. I crept downstairs and positioned myself at the kitchen window with a clear view of the backyard. The sounds were definitely coming from near the oak tree, but I still couldn't see anyone. Just that rhythmic scraping growing more urgent with each passing minute. Then I saw her. A figure emerged from the shadows behind the tree. A woman in a faded floral dress, her graying hair hanging loose around her shoulders. She moved with jerky, unnatural movements, like a marionette controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer. Mrs. Holloway. It had to be. She was carrying something in her arms, something wrapped in dark cloth. As I watched, frozen with terror, she knelt beside a freshly dug hole and gently placed the bundle inside. Her movements were almost tender, like a mother tucking a child into bed. That's when she looked up directly at the kitchen window. Even from 50 feet away, I could see her eyes clearly in the moonlight. They were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the entire visible surface, as if someone had filled them with ink. She smiled, and I saw that her teeth were stained dark with earth. I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, Mrs. Holloway was gone. The hole she'd been digging was filled in, the ground carefully smoothed over. No evidence remained except my shaking testimony. "Sir, you're obviously under a lot of stress," the officer said gently. "Moving to a new town, old house, lots of rumors. It's natural for your imagination to run wild." But after they left, I went outside with my shovel. Despite the officer's skepticism, I knew what I had seen. I dug where Mrs. Holloway had been kneeling, my flashlight beam dancing across the disturbed earth. 3 feet down, I found it. Another doll, but this one was different. Instead of having its eyes gouged out, this doll had been carefully crafted to look like someone specific. The face was painted with meticulous detail, the hair styled in a familiar way. It looked exactly like Sarah. I woke up alone. Sarah's side of the bed was cold, as if she'd been gone for hours. I called her name, but silence echoed through the house. Her car was still in the driveway, her purse on the kitchen counter, her phone plugged into the charger beside the bed, but Sarah was gone. I ran outside, calling her name, checking every corner of our property. That's when I noticed the oak tree. The earth around its base was freshly disturbed again, but this time the digging was more extensive. Someone had excavated a much larger area. And there, half buried in the soft dirt, was Sarah's slipper. I started digging frantically, throwing shovelfuls of earth aside, following the trail of disturbed soil. What I found made me drop to my knees in horror. The ground beneath the oak tree was honeycombed with tunnels and chambers, all carefully constructed and preserved. In each chamber lay the remains of people, some recent, some old enough to be barely more than bones. Each body was positioned carefully, almost reverently, surrounded by personal belongings. And in the newest chamber, I found Sarah. She was unconscious, but breathing, her skin pale and cold. Next to her lay the missing mate to the woman's shoe we'd found weeks earlier. On her other side was a fresh locket, this one containing a recent photo of our wedding day. Mrs. Holloway was building a collection. I carried Sarah out of that nightmare tunnel and called 911, demanding paramedics and police immediately. While we waited, I noticed movement in the shadows around our house, figures emerging from bushes, from behind trees, from the darkness itself. The missing owners. They moved with that same jerky, unnatural gait I'd seen from Mrs. Holloway. Their eyes were all black, their teeth stained with earth, and leading them was Mrs. Holloway herself, still wearing that faded floral dress. "You can't leave," she said, her voice like rustling leaves. "None of us can leave. We belong to Whisper Creek now." Behind her, the other figures nodded in unison, their dark eyes reflecting the streetlight like pools of oil. "The garden needs tending," Mrs. Holloway continued, taking a step closer. "New flowers need planting. Fresh soil needs turning." That's when I understood. The town historian with his knowing smile, the clerk who'd been so familiar with Mrs. Holloway's reading habits, even our realtor who'd discovered the impossible deed problem. They were all part of it. Whisper Creek wasn't just a small town with an unfortunate history of missing persons. It was something else entirely. A place that fed on newcomers, that collected them like trophies and kept them forever. The paramedics arrived just as Mrs. Holloway reached for me with dirt-caked fingers. The flashing lights and sirens seemed to drive the figures back into the shadows, but I could still see their dark eyes watching from the darkness. Sarah recovered in the hospital, though she claimed to remember nothing after going to bed that night. The police found the underground chambers and recovered remains dating back decades. The official report blamed Mrs. Holloway for everything, though they never found her body. We left Whisper Creek that same day, driving straight to Sarah's sister's house 3 states away. We never went back, not even to collect our belongings. But sometimes, late at night, I get calls on my cell phone. The caller ID shows our old house number, the one that was supposedly disconnected after we left. When I answer, I hear the sound of digging, that same rhythmic scraping of metal against earth, and underneath it, barely audible, I can hear Mrs. Holloway's voice. "The garden needs tending. Come back, come home." We changed our phone numbers, moved across the country, started over with new identities. But last week, Sarah found something in our new garden while planting tomatoes. A child's doll, its eyes carefully gouged out, buried exactly 18 inches deep. And yesterday, our new neighbor, a friendly man with wire-rimmed glasses and a smile that never quite reaches his eyes, stopped by to welcome us to the neighborhood. "Beautiful garden you're starting," he said, adjusting his glasses with nervous fingers. The previous owners loved to garden too. Always digging they were. Always digging. Some places, I've learned, don't let you go that easily, and sometimes they follow you home. The caw of crows still follows me, sharp, like they're calling my name. I'm 27, holed up in a Chicago apartment, my camera untouched for months. Last summer I was just a freelance photographer, chasing gigs between cities, my sketchpad full of half-drawn landscapes. Fallow Creek was supposed to be a shortcut, a blip on my way to St. Louis, but that town, it's a trap, and it's crows, it's people, they don't let go. I tried to tell the cops, my editor, anyone, but their eyes glaze over. Like I'm screaming into the wind, County Road 17 stretched dark and empty, my GPS chirping. Next exit, Fallow Creek. I was bleary-eyed, hauling gear from a Chicago shoot. The hum of my tires the only sound. Fallow Creek looked dead. Boarded diners. A gas station with pumps from the 70s. Streetlights flickering like they were giving up. I just needed gas. Maybe coffee. But the silo caught my eye, looming at the town's edge, rust streaking its sides like blood. At midnight, no moon, I saw headlights. 2 SUVs, parked crooked, figures in Carhartt jackets, passing duffel bags, heavy, clinking like metal on metal. My camera was on the passenger seat, instinct kicking in. I snapped a shot. The click loud, the flash a mistake. It lit the scene, and one guy turned, tall, hulking, his face scarred, like wax melted and reset. He raised a machete, its blade glinting, not a gun. Worse, my heart slammed, the rev of my engine drowning my gasp as I floored it, tires screeching on gravel. I didn't breathe until I hit the Motel 6, its neon sign buzzing, the lot empty. I locked my car, my room, the clink of the deadbolt, not enough to calm my pulse. Reason said they were smugglers, drifters, but my gut screamed I'd seen something I shouldn't. Morning brought a gray haze, the caw of a crow sharp outside. My car sat in the lot, 4 tires slashed, rubber gaping like wounds. On the hood, a dead crow, beak twisted open, claws clutching a Polaroid. My license plate, shot through my back window, time-stamped 7 a.m. My hands shook, the chirp of morning birds mocking me. The mechanic, a toothless guy with grease-stained hands, grinned as he fixed my tires with bald retreads, charging double. "Ain't from round here, huh?" he said, tossing a crow feather onto my seat. Fallow Creek don't like strangers. His laugh was hollow, his eyes too steady. I drove to the town library, the air thick with mold and dust. Headlines whispered, "Teen vanishes near silo. 92. Fentanyl bust linked to Fallow Creek. 9. Photos had faces scratched out, like someone clawed them away. A 1987 yearbook showed the soccer team, every kid's face eased in black ink. My phone buzzed, my editor, asking for sunset shots. I lied, stuck in traffic. But my hands were deep in my crayfish, my pulse racing. A creak came from the stacks, a shadow passing the frosted glass door. I grabbed my notes, the whir of the microfilm machine loud as I fled. The Polaroid burned in my pocket, but my camera held nothing. Just a black square where the silo shot shove it in. I had to go back, stupid as it was, driven by the need to know. At dusk, the silo loomed, its rust darker, wet. The caw of crows circled, their wings flapping too close. I climbed a rusted ladder, the groan of metal echoing, the air inside tasting of rot and oil. Duffel backs lay empty, but the walls were carved. Names, dates: Dylan, 92, Marissa, 9, Tyler, 24. My flashlight trembled, the clink of my keys loud. A crunch came outside, boots on gravel. Scarface filled the doorway, machete dangling, 5 others behind him, crow feathers tucked in their hats, their eyes glinting like the birds. "Snapped our family reunion," he rasped, dragging the blade across concrete. Sparks flying, my throat tightened. Their motive clear. A town guarding its secrets. Running drugs, maybe worse. Silencing anyone who saw. They were the crows, picking off threats to keep Fallow Creek's rot hidden. I bolted, dodging a swing. The whistle of the machete grazing my ear. My car roared to life. Bald tires screaming, their SUVs chasing, headlights blinding, until I hit the county line. A truck stops slow, save me. My hands shaking as I babbled to a deputy. He yawned. Fallow Creek silo burned in '95. No drugs, no gangs. The Polaroid from my glove box. He tossed it, calling it trash. I drove home. Changed my number. Got a guard dog, Max, who growls at shadows. But last week, editing wedding photos, I froze. A man in the background, scarred face, smiling. A crow feather in his pocket. Max whined last night. A thunk hitting my window. Another Polaroid. Me at my mailbox. Edges charred, like held to a flame. I burn every photo. Keep a knife by my bed. But every caw outside, every crunch of gravel, feels like Scarface, his machete still scraping. Fallow Creek's crows still circling. The city's hum can't drown the caw. Those eyes, I'm safe, they say. But Fallow Creek's out there. Its silo standing, my name carved on its walls. The caw of crows still follows me, sharp, like they're calling my name. I'm 27, holed up in a Chicago apartment, my camera untouched for months. Last summer I was just a freelance photographer, chasing gigs between cities, my sketchpad full of half-drawn landscapes. Fallow Creek was supposed to be a shortcut, a blip on my way to St. Louis, but that town, it's a trap, and it's crows, it's people, they don't let go. I tried to tell the cops, my editor, anyone, but their eyes glaze over. Like I'm screaming into the wind. County Road 17 stretched dark and empty. My GPS chirping. Next exit, Fallow Creek. I was bleary-eyed, hauling gear from a Chicago shoot. The hum of my tires the only sound. Fallow Creek looked dead. Boarded diners. A gas station with pumps from the 70s. Streetlights flickering like they were giving up. I just needed gas. Maybe coffee. But the silo caught my eye, looming at the town's edge, rust streaking its sides like blood. At midnight, no moon, I saw headlights. 2 SUVs, parked crooked, figures in Carhartt jackets, passing duffel bags, heavy, clinking like metal on metal. My camera was on the passenger seat, instinct kicking in. I snapped a shot. The click loud, the flash a mistake. It lit the scene, and one guy turned. Tall, hulking, his face scarred, like wax melted and reset. He raised a machete, its blade glinting, not a gun, worse. My heart slammed, the rev of my engine drowning my gasp as I floored it, tires screeching on gravel. I didn't breathe until I hit the Motel 6, its neon sign buzzing, the lot empty. I locked my car, my room, the clink of the deadbolt, not enough to calm my pulse. Reason said they were smugglers, drifters, but my gut screamed. I'd seen something I shouldn't. Morning brought a gray haze, the caw of a crow sharp outside. My car sat in the lot, 4 tires slashed, rubber gaping like wounds. On the hood, a dead crow, beak twisted open, claws clutching a Polaroid. My license plate, shot through my back window, time-stamped 7 a.m. My hands shook, the chirp of morning birds mocking me. The mechanic, a toothless guy with grease-stained hands, grinned as he fixed my tires with bald retreads, charging double. "Ain't from round here, huh?" he said, tossing a crow feather onto my seat. "Fallow Creek don't like strangers." His laugh was hollow, his eyes too steady. I drove to the town library, the air thick with mold and dust. Headlines whispered, "Teen vanishes near silo. 92. Fentanyl bust linked to Fallow Creek. 9. Photos had faces scratched out, like someone clawed them away. A 1987 yearbook showed the soccer team, every kid's face eased in black ink. My phone buzzed. My editor, asking for sunset shots. I lied, stuck in traffic. But my hands were deep in microfiche, my pulse racing. A creak came from the stacks, a shadow passing the frosted glass door. I grabbed my notes, the whir of the microfilm machine loud as I fled. The Polaroid burned in my pocket, but my camera held nothing. Just a black square where the silo shot shove it in. I had to go back, stupid as it was, driven by the need to know. At dusk, the silo loomed, its rust darker, wet. The call of crows circled, their wings flapping too close. I climbed a rusted ladder, the groan of metal echoing, the air inside tasting of rot and oil. Duffel bags lay empty, but the walls were carved. Names, dates: Dylan, 92, Marissa, 9, Tyler, 24. My flashlight trembled, the clink of my keys loud. A crunch came outside. Boots on gravel. Scarface filled the doorway, machete dangling. 5 others behind him, crow feathers tucked in their hats, their eyes glinting like the birds. "Snapped our family reunion," he rasped, dragging the blade across concrete. Sparks flying. My throat tightened. Their motive clear. A town guarding its secrets. Running drugs, maybe worse. Silencing anyone who saw. They were the crows, picking off threats to keep Fallow Creek's rot hidden. I bolted, dodging a swing, the whistle of the machete grazing my ear. My car roared to life, bald tires screaming, their SUVs chasing, headlights blinding, until I hit the county line. A truck stopped slow, save me, my hands shaking as I babbled to a deputy. He yawned. Fallow Creek silo burned in 95. No drugs, no gangs. The Polaroid from my glove box. He tossed it, calling it trash. I drove home. Changed my number. Got a guard dog, Max, who growls at shadows. But last week, editing wedding photos, I froze. A man in the background, scarred face, smiling. A crow feather in his pocket. Max whined last night. A thunk hitting my window. Another Polaroid. Me at my mailbox. Edges charred, like held to a flame. I burn every photo. Keep a knife by my bed. But every call outside, every crunch of gravel, feels like Scarface, his machete still scraping. Fallow Creek's crows still circling. The city's hum can't drown the caw. Those eyes, I'm safe, they say. But Fallow Creek's out there. Its silo standing, my name carved on its walls.